Thank you for listening to the Sunday morning message from the Awakening Ways spiritual community in Atascadero, California. We invite you to experience the love and the joy of living the consciously awakened life right here, right now.
Namaste. Welcome to Awakening Ways spiritual community. Awakening Ways is a New Thought spiritual community in the lineage of Dr. Ernest Holmes. We're a community that believes in the golden thread of truth and love that winds its way through all great spiritual traditions. That thread of universal consciousness, of divine mind, that thread of manifesting the divinity within us, whether we call it our Buddha nature or our Christ nature or our Krishna nature, doesn't matter. It is the one that is within us, living through us and as us, and allowing our minds, that use that we make of that one mind, to control the conditions of our lives, because as we think, so we are. I'm Dr. Frank Zemalan. Dr. Terry and I want to welcome you. Welcome you here this morning to join us in celebrating that golden thread of truth. And so we'll start, as we always do, with a brief prayer. So if you'll please join me, just relax in your seats. If you're hanging on to that cup of tea or that cup of coffee, just put it down for a minute. I know that there is one divine source, one infinite intelligence in the universe, one infinite and eternal love, unconditionally holding all of its creation in that lover's embrace. It doesn't matter what I call it or what anyone calls it. It is that divine life essence, the creative energy and creative force that moves through all of life, that is here present within me, for it is me. I am a manifestation of it. And as it's true for me, it's true for everyone, everything, every sentient being in the universe, that we are one with that divinity and one with one another. And in that truth, I know and I declare for everyone this morning that everyone on this call and everyone who's not on this call is going to receive something that they need to carry them through the trying times that we happen to be in right now. I know that the Spirit is present here and now. I know that the Spirit is present wherever you are. I know that together, Spirit speaks and Spirit hears. And the result is an agreement in consciousness that raises us all to a higher level. For that, I am so grateful. I am so grateful for the presence of Spirit in this right now. I am so grateful for our ability to communicate, even though we can't be together. I've spoken my word of love. That love has impelled the law into action. And the manifestation, the demonstration is already complete. I am so grateful to Reverend Terry for her talk this morning, for all that she shares with us. For I know that Spirit moving through her is already demonstrating that perfect message for all of us. Knowing there's nothing more to do, I simply say, and so it is. Amen.
Namaste. Good morning. The light and love of the divine in me honors and greets the light and the love of the divine in each and every one of you here this morning. If you are as fortunate as we are, you might be being serenaded by the rain. The rain is falling and it is such a beautiful thing, such a beautiful thing. We love that so much. And so we feel blessed, especially this morning, to have you with us and to be experiencing this gift of water from the sky. So lovely. This is the first Sunday in the month of April, and we have a new seed of awakening this morning. Our seed of awakening for the month of April is grace. I think it's a wonderful seed to focus on during this month of April. We know Easter takes place during this month, and it's the beginning of the spring season, and grace just abounds, doesn't it? The dictionary defines grace in this way: the free and unmerited favor of God. Ernest Holmes defines grace as the givingness of spirit to its creation. The givingness of spirit to its creation. Paul Tillich says that grace is accepting that we are accepted. Isn't that a great idea? Accepting the reality that we are already accepted. That is grace. But you know, my favorite definition of grace is this quote from St. Augustine. And he says, "What is grace? I know until you ask me, but when you ask me, I don't know." Grace has this way of being real and experiential, and yet it is so hard to catch. It is so hard to wrap our minds around. It's so hard to define, really. I define grace as that which arrives when we need it most, and we may not even know we need it. That's my definition of grace. And so let me just begin this morning by sharing a story of grace with you. This is a story about Christian theologian Frederick Buechner. And he tells of a time in his life when he was experiencing a lot of anguish and pain and suffering. His daughter was very ill, and his family was in a turmoil over all of this. And Frederick was moving into a place of depression. He was moving into a place of fear and anxiety around everything. And he was driving in his car and realized he just needed to pull over to the side of the road and gather himself together. So he's sitting on the side of the road, on the side of the highway, and he's, doing his prayer work, we assume, trying to get himself back into a place of steady calmness. When out of nowhere, this car comes driving down the road, and it had a license plate on the back that, out of all of the words in the dictionary that could have been chosen to put on this license plate, it had the perfect one. The license plate said, trust. Trust. And so for Frederick, seeing this moving image going down the highway, he felt that it was an epiphany. He felt that God had literally spoken to him in that moment, and his faith was renewed. He was returned to that place of balance and centering. Sometime later, he wrote an article about this experience that he had. And somehow, the man who owned the license plate, the car with the license plate, surprisingly one day showed up at Frederick's door and handed Frederick the license plate. Frederick gladly took the license plate. He took it into his home, and he has it displayed in his home in a place of honor. And this license plate reminds him of the gift of grace that he received that day. Beautiful story. So what we can learn from Frederick Buechner's story is that this is how grace sometimes moves in our lives. For Frederick, grace appeared when he was in the place of deepest depression and despair. And it showed up as that car driving down the road. But it also showed up surprisingly as the man knocking on his door to give him this gift of the license plate. And truthfully, this is kind of the way of grace. It either shows up when we are in that place of deepest dark turmoil and despair and depression, and we think all is lost and we want to give up, or it appears when we least suspect it and it surprises us by its arrival. But either way we look at it, what we can come to understand is that it usually comes without us asking for it, because that's not the way of grace. That's not the way of grace. Here's some things we do know about grace, though. We can't earn it. We can't work. We can't do all of our spiritual practices and all of our prayers and struggle and strain to try to earn our way to grace. That's not the way of grace. We can't control it. Well, no. We can't decide when it's coming. We can't decide what it's going to look like. We cannot control it. We don't have to deserve it. Here's the thing about grace. We all deserve it. Everyone deserves grace. So rather than saying we don't have to deserve it, what we need to really realize is that we always deserve grace. And we can't make it happen. We cannot, I want grace and I want it now. I want grace and I want it now. We can't make it happen. Grace isn't like that either. But what we do know is that if we want to receive grace, we need to be in a place of openness. We need to be in a place of receptivity, available, present, so that when grace shows up, we're ready. We're ready. That place of yes, welcome. Joel Goldsmith compares divine grace with gravity. Gravity. So, gravity is a law. And he says that the law of gravity is always available. It's always in operation. But the truth is that we don't really think much about the law of gravity until we drop a plate on the floor. And then it's like, oh yeah, that's right. If I drop something, it's liable to break, the law of gravity. Joel Goldsmith says that grace is actually a state of being. Gravity is a law, and grace is a state of being. And grace, like gravity, is always present. It is always available. It is always right where we are. But grace has a couple of conditions. And the main condition for the experience of grace is that we try as much as possible to make ourselves empty. And by that, I mean that grace doesn't move in the energy of judgment. Grace doesn't move in the energy of anger. Grace moves in the energy of clarity and a place of spaciousness, where even if we are in turmoil, even if we feel like all is lost, if there is this opening where we find that one clear, deep breath, and we're just open, grace can arrive. Grace can arrive. So in this month, as we move along looking at grace, let's keep in mind that the place of consciousness that we want to focus on is allowing ourselves to be, as much as possible, empty, and available. You know, I wasn't really going to talk about what was going on in the world today, but it's kind of hard to escape, really. It's fueling our lives. It's fueling our moments every day. I mean, I was out for a walk and I ran into a couple of our neighbors, and they were out in their yard and they were tidying things up. And we had this conversation, and the word that we came up with was weird. We said, it just feels weird out there. It's like nothing we've ever experienced before. And then John, my neighbor, said, yeah, but you know what? Everybody in the world is feeling the same weirdness at the exact same time we are. So even though I wasn't going to talk about it, we're going to touch in on it just a little bit, if that's all right with you this morning. So as we look out at the world today and we see everything that's going on, it may be hard for us to use the word grace to describe what's going on. Grace. That's not the first word that may come to mind. For me, what I've kind of come to use as a word or as a concept is the idea that grace in this situation kind of has two sides. And so I'm calling it the terrible, beautiful grace. The terrible, beautiful grace. Here's the reality. People are sick. People are suffering. People are leaving the planet. People are worried and concerned about their future and what that future holds. And the truth is, for all of us, we need to be aware of these things going on, because when everything settles down, everyone, especially those who are in special predicaments around lifestyle and around whether or not they can afford to make their house payments or buy food, all of these predicaments that people seem to be in, we need to be there to hold them in that truth and to know that everything, the spirit of life, the spirit of God, the spirit of truth is moving through them and through this experience. We need to be there to hold the high watch for them. So yes, there are terrible things going on. But at the same time, at the very same time, there are these remarkable experiences happening simultaneously where people, individuals, groups, organizations are stepping up and serving humanity in these incredible, remarkable ways. And that is beautiful. We seem to be coming to a place in our lifetime where there's the possibility that we could actually have a world community. We are actually experiencing that right now, just like my neighbor John said. We are also coming to look at one another in a new way. We can actually see one another. We're hearing one another. It's opening our eyes and opening us to be able to experience everything in a new, deeper, and more profound way. And that's beautiful. That's beautiful. So yes, there are terrible things going on. And yes, there are beautiful things happening as well. And it is all grace expressing itself here and now. When you think about it, and you think about this experience we're having, you know, this experience was a surprising experience, and it arrived just as grace often arrives, as a surprise. a real surprise to everybody on the planet because this particular virus has never been here before. And so like grace, it arrived, and it feels uncomfortable though to think of it as a grace-filled experience. And yet, here's the truth of it. We do not know what that divine plan for grace is, what it will result in. We don't know what is going to finally unfold at the end of all of this. We have no way of knowing. I mean, what if this grace was happening so that we could in fact heal our planet? What if this grace happened so that we could learn to deepen our own spiritual experiences? Well, that's beautiful, isn't it? That's beautiful. However we title our grace, whether it's terrible or beautiful in whatever given moment we're in, what I do know is that we do not want to miss a single opportunity to experience grace in our lives. We want to take advantage of every moment to cultivate this experience of grace. And let me share an experience with you that I had just last week. So at our home, we don't have a beautiful green front lawn anymore. That's gone. And the yard has pretty much returned to its natural state. But what we do have, and what we've had for so many years, is we have these spiritual statues that are strategically placed all around the house. So there's a statue of St. Francis, and he's in the driveway, and there's a Buddha up at the front door. At the back door, there's also a Buddha. Down on the deck, there's a beautiful statue of Kuan Yin, and there's another beautiful statue of Kuan Yin who sits in the front yard under this big tree that's right there in the front yard. She sits there beautifully. And the other statue that we have is my favorite statue, and it is the statue of Mother Mary. I'm very attached to this statue. I love this statue. And she stands under a tree on one side of the house. And when I stand at the sink in the kitchen, I can look out and see her standing there blessing everything. Actually, on the whole side of that house, I can see Mary under that tree. And, you know, it just gives me a sense of peace and joy and comfort to see her there. Well, last week, it was about 9 o'clock in the morning, and I was up and I was opening the blinds in the living room. And I looked out to see this beautiful, young, very young buck deer curled up about 6 inches from the statue of Mary, just curled up with his head tucked in, so close to her. It was just so amazing. I looked and my heart was just open and open and open, and I just felt so blessed to be able to witness this. And I'm telling Frank, you've got to see this, but he was unable to be there to see it. And so what I did was I thought, oh, this was such a brilliant idea I had. I know, I'll take a picture of it, right? Because that way then I'll have this image forever. So I picked up my phone and I, tapped it, and I'm trying to find the buttons to push to be able to take the picture of the deer out there underneath the statue of Mary. But of course, I couldn't really see the buttons on my phone because why? I didn't have my glasses on. So of course I had to find my glasses then. So I hunted around and I found my glasses. I have my glasses on. I've got my phone. I've got it tapped into the camera. I'm trying to find the right buttons to push. I find the right buttons. But right at that moment, before I could take the picture, the deer rose and walked away from the statue. I'm telling you this story about myself as an opportunity for you to not do what I did. You see, I had this experience of grace right there. And let me just say this, that I know that God cooked up that experience especially for me on that morning. It was just for me. But rather than fully experience the moment for what it was, I decided that I wanted to capture it. I wanted to hold it in my hands. I wanted to control the whole situation. And what ended up happening was that I lost part of the beauty of that whole experience. So I hope you learned something from me, because grace will happen in your life. And when it does, be there with it. Be present for the grace. Whatever it is, don't try to make it be something other than what it is. And grace is always beautiful in that way. We wanted to, as we move through these days, kind of provide people with tools that they could use to help them move through whatever is going on in their lives. And the thing about grace is that grace naturally, when you recognize that you've had a grace-filled experience, grace naturally produces or creates within us a sense of awe and wonder and this deep, deep gratitude. It's an experience that we want to foster, that we want to expand, that we want to grow. And this period of time is the perfect opportunity, the perfect time for us to be more available to grace. Because, a lot of the busyness of our lives has kind of calmed down a bit. We're spending more time at home. We're spending more time doing quiet things. And we're able to be more present with our daily lives and our daily activities. We have the opportunity to allow our senses to come out and play. Just think about it. We can see more, we can hear more, we can feel more, we can taste more. Why? Because our minds and our lives are not quite so cluttered with all of the worry and the concern and the busyness of everyday life. This in itself is a gift of grace. This period of time where we can actually use this strangeness of times to grow our own spirituality, to expand our inner lives. We don't want to miss any opportunity to make that happen. There's a strong connection between grace and the word devotion. Grace and devotion. Devotion is not really a word we use very often in New Thought, but really devotion is just a focused form of spiritual practice. Devotions usually require or include rituals of some kind, a consistent practice of a ritual of some kind. And so if we can add a practice of devotion into our daily lives, then can you feel that would just create like an anchor for yourself, an anchor for these deeply holy experiences that you could be having as a result of everything that's going on. So I wanted to share with you this morning just a couple of devotional practices that some of them you may already be doing, I'm guessing, and knowing that you are. Maybe you're not. Maybe this will be a reminder to reinstate an old practice that you used to do that you've given up for a time. Poet John O'Donohue said, "Keep something beautiful in your heart." Keep something beautiful in your heart. And what he's reminding us of is the fact that if we can cultivate or remember or create some beautiful thought, some beautiful melody, some beautiful image that we can carry in our hearts, so that when we get worried or concerned or upset, we can turn to that place of beauty that dwells in our hearts. We will be returned to that place of centering, to that place of spiritual alignment. And so your devotional activity is that each day, try to find, well, no, I'm not going to say try to find. Each day, find something beautiful. Each day, find something beautiful and take that beauty into your heart. Allow it to dwell there and know that you can return to it at any time, and it will bring you back to spiritual alignment. Dr. Frank shared with me last week, I think it was, that he had read where our pets, you know, the dogs and cats and probably horses and all kinds of creatures out there that we call pets, are experiencing stress themselves during this time. They're experiencing stress. Why? Because we're stressful. And so there's stress in the house and the animals pick that up. But they also are experiencing stress because they're not used to having their people around 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. You know, we have 2 cats, and what we know is that there is a period of time each day where our cats expect us to leave the house. They expect us to be somewhere else because this is their time to be alone. This is their time for silence. This is their human-free time zone. And I think this is true for so many of our animals. And so just a reminder to you about that, to be aware of what your pets are feeling. And on the same vein, let's remind ourselves that each and every day it is necessary, very necessary, that we find time where we can be alone as well. Quiet time, time alone by ourselves, where we can get quiet, where we can get silent, and where we can feel that we are alone in that moment. It doesn't have to be for a long period of time, but that place where we just collect ourselves to ourselves. We make ourselves whole in that moment, just us. If you haven't done so, I want to encourage you to create a sacred space in your home. Sacred spaces don't have to look like an altar. A sacred space can be your favorite chair. It could be a table. It can be a window. It can be a corner in a room. A sacred space is anywhere where you go and you can feel that you can take this deep, full breath and you can bring yourself to yourself and be alone in the moment with God. If you haven't created a sacred space, think about it. Think about it. And allow yourself some time during every day where you can be alone with God in the silence as much as possible. The next suggestion is really an option. And this suggestion is to light a candle. Now, I understand that there are issues with wax candles. There are safety issues, there are health issues around candles. And also there are safer candles that are available to burn, like soy candles and so on. But I'm mentioning it today because there is something about lighting a candle that's different than clicking on our little battery-operated candles. And Brother David Steindl-Rast talks about this devotional practice of lighting a candle. And I can't say it better than him. And so I'm just going to share with you what he says about his experience of lighting a candle each day. He says, to light a candle by myself is one of my favorite prayers. The very act of lighting the candle is prayer. There's the sound of striking the match, the whiff of smoke after the candle is lit, the way the flame flares up and then sinks and almost goes out until a drop of melted wax gives it strength to grow to its proper size and steady itself. My being alone is essential to this prayer. The presence of even one other person would completely change it. Something would be lost. So I'm starting to add lighting a candle back into my rituals because I miss it, frankly. I miss the sense of seeing that living flame moving and knowing that as I pass my hand over it, I'll feel that warmth. So I'm initiating lighting a candle to my devotional practices, and then when my practices are over, I'll just blow out the candle and appreciate it for the short time that it shared its life with me in that practice. So if this practice works for you, I encourage you to try it. Anything that can bring us to a place of realization that God is always present and that grace within us is right where we are is beautiful. It is an opportunity for us to grow and spiritually evolve ourselves during this period of time. What I know is that when we are quiet, and we have the opportunity to be quiet often now, when we are quiet and we become still, this is the gateway to grace. So why wouldn't we want to practice? Why wouldn't we want to find ways where we can create that open spaciousness for grace to arrive at our own doorstep? You know, the phrase that's being used now is sheltering in place. I love that, actually. Sheltering in place in our homes. And for me, I know that it's supposed to be, I guess, punitive. I don't know, shelter in place and don't leave your homes. Well, I don't take it that way. When I hear the phrase sheltering in place, I think of the word sheltering, and to me, sheltering means a place of feeling safe and warm and taken care of. Sheltered in place. What I want to remind you of this morning is that we are always sheltered in place. You see, the divine is always there. The divine is always present. And that divine presence is always sheltering us in the light and love of its own presence. A Course in Miracles says this: Spirit is in a state of grace forever. Your reality is only spirit. Therefore, you are in a state of grace forever. Grace is in you now. Grace will be there tomorrow. Grace is in you forever because it is simply the divine expressing in you as grace. So feel that sheltering presence of the divine right here and right now. And I invite you, if you will, to just join me for a closing prayer, just for a moment. Let's just touch back into that place within us. You know, that place where love and light dwell. That place where grace is. For there is spirit and there is only spirit. There is God and only God. And it is in and as all things, seen and unseen. It is in me, it is in all of me, in all of my experiences, in every breath. It is my life itself, as it is the life of all beings everywhere. This power and this presence and this love and this peace and this joy, this grace of God is always right where we are. And so I know that for each and every person who is on this call today, each and every person everywhere is experiencing this grace of the divine in a new and deeper way today. I know that as the day unfolds, each and every person opens to see and to hear and to feel that grace-filled presence that is surrounding them every moment of every day. And I know that this experience continues to grow and grow each and every day as we move through the events that are taking place on our planet today. God is present. Grace is here. And I am so very, very grateful for that. And knowing that as I have spoken my word, every word that I have spoken is already true and already moving in the lives of everyone. And I'm grateful for that as well. And knowing that this is so, I set my word free. I allow it to be. And so it is. Amen.
Thank you, Dr. Terry. That was wonderful. It's something we all needed. A little bit more grace to go through what we're going through. I just want to remind everyone that we are keeping our office open, broadcasting from our offices. We still have all of our expenses to pay. And as we go through this experience, we still need your love offerings, because this is a time when we're not having groups of people together, and yet our expenses continue. So I want to invite you, if you would, to go to our website. Our address is there. Our address is 7305 El Camino 101, Atascadero. And also on the website, if you will go to the community menu bar and go to the Get Involved window, you'll find at the bottom of that window the PayPal button that you can donate through. And for your offerings, for your love offerings, we are most very, very grateful. So until we see you next time, Please be safe, be well, and our blessing for you is love the life you live. Namaste.